I'm Dayna J, Francois, and you're listening to Stirring the Plot. Whether you're gay, hot, or doing it for the plot, this is the podcast for you. We're here and we're queer, we're gay, and we slay. And today's episode is one I am excited to bring to you guys. I am reigniting listeners' favorite installment, the misadventures in dating. You know me by now, listeners. If there is one thing I am going to do, I'm gonna do it for the plot. Even when the plot turns into a psychological thriller and you're not sure if you're the main character or the hostage. Yes, today I am telling you a story that honestly still haunts me. A tale of good intentions, lesbian love bombing, red flags disguised as flowers, and one bonnet I will never forget. This, listeners, is the story of Insta Wife. So let me take you back to one of the wildest dating moments I've ever survived. This was post Taylor's version. You know the one, if you've been listening. Taylor's version was emotionally unavailable, kind of looked like Taylor Swift, religiously traumatized, and left me in shambles when she completed her sapphic tryst and was ready to return back to her fiancé and their cult. Oh, Taylor's version. Anyway, so this story happened in the middle of my post Taylor's version spiral. That woman had just wrecked me, like completely wrecked me. And I was in my, maybe I'm the problem, but at least I'm hot era. I was spiraling. I wanted attention. I wanted a crush. I wanted something that would make me feel less disposable and more like the main character again. I wasn't dating. I was rebounding for serotonin. I was hungry for validation, just trying to feel something, ideally not heartbreak. So when I matched with this girl, we call her Insta Wife, she, honestly listeners, she was cute. We had fun banter. She seemed really sweet, but the vibe felt platonic. But we ended up hanging out, and our first hangout was very chill. We thrifted, grabbed boba, went to a Thai spot, laughed a little. It was nothing romantic. There was no tension, just, yeah, she's cool. The vibe was fine. The chemistry, dormant. It felt like friendship. But of course, as emotionally unavailable and spiraling over a situationship as I got a little messy. And the flirting started. We began texting more. I began flirting because sometimes I just cannot help myself. Or at least, let me be more honest, most times. Anyway, she asked me if I was flirting with her, and I, in my chaotic softness, sent her a voice memo where I jokingly said, well, what if I was flirting with you? And listeners, that was all she needed. That was the catalyst, because suddenly it wasn't platonic. Suddenly I was the muse. Suddenly I was the center of her sapphic Pinterest board, because suddenly we were in a rom-com and I was the confused lesbian lead who wasn't actually trying to fall in love. She tells me that she wants to come over and do my nails. That's cute, right? And I say, why not? I mean, it felt safe. So she shows up to my house at 11 a.m. with a full nail kit in tow, but no LED light, which meant we couldn't even do the nails. I should have known right then that this wasn't just a cute little nail date. This was a rollout. Insta Wife pivots immediately. She's like, well, I actually have a surprise for you. I planned a picnic. I brought snacks and I made you a playlist. Okay, we had just made the slight sidestep from platonic into whatever was going on here for the plot, and this girl's making me a playlist? But you know me, gay, hot, and doing it for the plot, I go on this date because I am emotionally unwell and slightly flattered. So the date, we paint in the park, she's playing music, she literally says, these songs made me think of you, and then we somehow wander into a dog festival. How did we end up there? Who fucking knows? But later we get gelato, we go to the grocery store, and then she's in my kitchen in an apron cooking salmon, potatoes, and asparagus. I mean, it is giving surprise domesticity. It is giving lesbian hostage situation with snacks. I remember thinking this would all be really sweet if I had feelings for her, but I don't, and I don't want this. And yet I let it happen. because she was so kind, so gentle, and I genuinely didn't know what to do. When someone gives you affection wrapped in softness, it is hard to push it away, especially when you've only ever known love as something that you had to chase. But I didn't feel safe. I felt cornered by kindness. So we ate. She pours wine. Somehow later, Twilight gets turned on and we watch not one, but 2 Twilight movies. And you know those moments where the record scratches and it slowly zooms in on the main character and says, yeah, that's me. You're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation. Because, listeners, I realize I must have disassociated for 15 hours, because what is this woman doing in my bed wearing my sweatpants, and we're 2.5 movies deep into the Twilight saga? Genuinely, what the fuck? And then she puts on her bonnet. Yeah, you heard that right. She pulled out a silk bonnet from her purse at 1 a.m. in my house. No, can I stay the night? No, do you want me to sleep over? Just bonnet. She brought her bonnet and somehow she forgot to bring boundaries. And I remember sitting there thinking, oh my God, I have a wife. I don't remember consenting to marriage. In this moment, listeners, this is whenever you're going to call me a fuckboy, but I get up to go to the bathroom, and really in the bathroom, I am just pacing back and forth, trying to figure out how I ended up here, because the math isn't mathing. I mean, wasn't I just crashing out about Taylor's version yesterday? So anyway, I get out of the bathroom, I walk over to the bed, and I sit at the corner and offer her a smile. And she genuinely looks sweet. She has her glasses on, bonnet on, all cozy under my sheets, and suddenly my fuckboy alter ego comes out and I say, damn, it's late. I'ma walk you out. I know what you're thinking. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. It's 2 a.m. She's been with me since 11. We have spent, 15 hours together. I walked her out and I said goodnight, and it's not one of my proudest moments. But it was 2 a.m. and she'd been with me since 11 a.m. And you think that would be it. But no, the next day she comes back to my house to quote unquote drop off my stuff, the sweatpants and t-shirt that she borrowed from the night before. So she arrives, she walks in uninvited, fully opening the doors, not an invitation to come inside, but she comes in, she walks up not one but both flights of stairs in my house, and immediately goes to my room, lays on my bed with outside clothes on. She pulls my blanket over herself like she lived there, and the worst part, I just let it happen. I sat there frozen, disassociating, because what do you do when someone is being sweet to you in all the wrong ways? Because I didn't know how to create a boundary without hurting someone who clearly meant well. And because I was still reeling from being discarded from Taylor's version, I confused closeness with care. And then eventually, she gets up to leave and kisses me and looks me right in the eyes and says, I love you. Record scratch. Listeners, I didn't even know her last name. I mean, we had hung out, twice? Yeah, that wasn't love. That wasn't romance. That was projection. That was a romantic monologue I had been cast in without my consent. That was someone loving the idea of me, falling in love with the way I made them feel, not who I actually was. And me? I mean, I was so wrapped up in trying to feel wanted that I ignored how overwhelmed I was. I let someone consume my space because I didn't want to seem mean, because she didn't do anything wrong necessarily, but it still didn't feel right. Queer love can be soft, it can be instant, it can be overwhelming, but it should never feel like you're being devoured. It should never feel like your space is being filled before you even said yes. I don't regret the story. It gave me great content. But next time someone shows up at 11 a.m. with an apron, a curated playlist, and a bonnet in their purse, I am locking the fucking door. So yeah, I ghosted, which I don't usually do, but in that situation, in that moment, that was the only way I knew how to recenter myself. I mean, I still think about her, not because I miss her, but because it taught me something. That softness should never be a weapon, that boundaries don't make you unkind, and that being loved too quickly can feel just as jarring as being left too easily. Insta Wife meant well. She really did. But intention does not always equal safety. So, to the girl who brought her bonnet on a second date, I hope that you find someone who wants that kind of love. But next time, ask before unpacking your whole life in someone else's living room. Listeners, if you have ever survived a queer date that turned into a full U-Haul fantasy before you even kissed, I see you. And if you have a sapphic misadventure of your own, email me at stirringtheplotpodsubmissions@gmail.com. I want all the mess, all the metaphors, all the bonnet level boundary violations, because here on Stirring the Plot, we reclaim our narratives, we romanticize our red flags, and we remind ourselves we are not responsible for anyone's fantasy. Now, Insta Wife is the perfect example of today's main topic, something that has been haunting lesbian streets for decades. We are talking about U-Haul lesbians, also known as, what do lesbians bring on the second date? A U-Haul, a toothbrush, a trauma bond, and a Spotify playlist that already has your name on it. U-Haul lesbians is a very well-known stereotype in the queer community. Date 1, you're in love. Date 2, she's cooking dinner, borrowing your car, and casually hinting at dog names. Date 3, she has her mail forwarded to your house and tells your grandma she's part of the family now, you know? But let's not reduce this to a stereotype or to a meme. Let's talk about what's really underneath the joke. Because if we peel back the lesbian leather jacket and gaze past the granola, U-Haul culture isn't just about rushing in. It is about longing. Listeners, today we are diving into a cornerstone of queer culture, a phrase that strikes fear into emotionally unavailable exes and sparks joy in women who dream in Pinterest boards. A concept so specific it's universal, so chaotic it's comforting. So where did this U-Haul even come from? The term U-Haul lesbian has been around since at least the 90s, but the behavior predates language. Queer women and sapphics more broadly have always found home in each other quickly, because historically we had to. When you grow up in a world that tells you that your desire is shameful, your love is deviant, or your softness is too much, intimacy, it becomes rebellion. And when you finally meet someone who makes you feel seen, like actually seen, you don't tiptoe, you cannonball. Sapphic intimacy is fast because it's built on decades of emotional drought. We weren't allowed the luxury of casual. So when we find someone who makes our chest feel like a sunroof cracked open in spring, we speed. We call it chemistry, we call it fate, but more often than not, it is a combination of longing, trauma, and zero emotional pacing. It's not just about falling in love, it is about trying to build a home you never thought that you'd have, fast, before it disappears. The love is real, but so is the whiplash. U-Haul culture is rooted in urgency, and urgency feels romantic until it doesn't. Because here's what happens when you move too fast. You start skipping steps. You confuse vulnerability with compatibility. You treat emotional safety like it can be DoorDashed. You say, I love you before you even know if you like their taste in movies. And suddenly you're watching Twilight with a girl who cooked you salmon and she said, we should adopt a dog. And you're still wondering if she's actually funny or just conventionally attractive. We do it because we crave connection. We want someone to see all the soft, strange, sacred parts of us and not flinch. But what we forget is that true intimacy requires time. Not a weekend, not a playlist, not a picnic with Prosecco and paintbrushes. And when we speedrun it, we don't get real connection. We get a performance of one. We get projection, pressure, and poetry that doesn't stick. Listeners, softness isn't a contract. There is a difference between showing up authentically and building a fantasy. And too many of us, myself included, have mistaken the act of being adored for the experience of being understood. U-Haul lesbians often skip consent, not in a malicious way, but in an emotional one. Can I stay over becomes assumed. Do you want this too becomes implied. Boundaries forgotten in the face of a shared Spotify likes and mutual astrology sign. But love, real love asks. Real love pauses. Real love says, I want to build something, but only if you're walking beside me, not being dragged behind. So what does it really mean to stir the plot? Sometimes U-Haul culture isn't about love at all. It's about plot. It's about wanting to be in a love story so badly that you write the script yourself and cast whoever is available. And that's the danger, because you can't manifest mutuality. You can't journal someone into being your person. You can't logic your way into chemistry. You can't romance your way into alignment. And when you try, you get a sapphic speedrun straight into heartbreak. You get bonnet sleepovers and salmon dinners and I love you after 2 dates. You get story times, yeah, but you don't get soulmates. Hear me when I say this, listeners. Slow isn't boring. It's safe. This is what I've learned. As a reformed serial connector with a weakness for anyone who smells good and knows their moon sign, you do not have to perform love to deserve it. You do not have to speed to prove you're serious. You do not have to move someone in to keep them from leaving. You are allowed to take your time. You are allowed to ask, are we moving too fast? You are allowed to say no, even if they brought a blanket and a toothbrush and a shared Google Calendar, and maybe that is the most romantic thing of all. Not the U-Haul, not the curated playlist, but someone who looks at you and says, we have time. There is no fire to put out, just something real to build if you want it to. Listeners, lesbians love hard. Lesbians fall fast. But what no one talks about is how messy it gets when that connection is one-sided. Because I wasn't even on the U-Haul. I was still standing on the curb wondering how I got here with paint on my jeans and a girl whispering I love you after one picnic and a Twilight double feature. The truth is, you can't force connection. You can't will someone into being your soulmate just because you're lonely. And you definitely cannot write a love story on the first page and expect the other person to skip chapters to meet you there. That is how you end up moving at warp speed while the other person is still reading the intro. And when one of you is building a future while the other is still trying to decide if there's even chemistry, the crash is inevitable. It's not always malicious. Sometimes people just want so badly to be loved that they try to manufacture magic. But just like Rome, love isn't built in a day. It's not curated through playlists or painted on picnic canvases. It is not about salmon dinners or silk bonnets. It is about seeing each other clearly. It is about patience, pacing, consent, and most importantly, it is about alignment. Because being adored by someone you don't feel safe with, that isn't love, that is pressure. It's a weight dressed up as a compliment. And listen, I am not blameless here. I mean, I didn't speak up. I didn't draw boundaries. I let it go too far because I didn't want to be unkind, because it felt nice to be wanted even if it wasn't real. But forcing a vibe is like forcing a plot twist. It might give you a good story, but it will not give you peace. And I've learned, just because a date turns into a 15-hour lesbian documentary with a soundtrack and a salmon entree does not mean it is destiny. Sometimes it is just delusion with good intention. So now, when I feel that U-Haul itch, when someone is moving too fast, too soon, too deep, I remind myself, stirring the plot has led me places I wouldn't even go with a GPS. And that's okay, because sometimes the story isn't about the romance. Sometimes the story is the red flag you ignored for content. The girl who moved in emotionally before you even gave her your favorite mug. The paintbrush picnic that turned into a psychological thriller. And while I may not have gained a girlfriend, I did gain a plotline and a damn good podcast episode. So, listeners, if you are currently in a situationship that feels like a rom-com speedrun, blink twice, drink some water, and ask yourself if you are in love or just impressed. And remember, you cannot U-Haul your way into emotional safety. You can't shortcut alignment, but you can get a good story out of it. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes you don't need a U-Haul at all. You just need a little time and a front seat in your own story. But for now, we're gonna wrap this episode up. If you are enjoying my podcast, don't forget to rate it 5 stars, because it not only lets me know that you enjoy listening, but it also helps my podcast get boosted so that I can reach a wider audience. Follow @Stirring the Plot Pod on all social media platforms to stay up to date and never miss an episode. If you'd like to connect with me, I am just @Dayna J Francois on all social media platforms. I will have everything linked in the show notes. And with that being said, if you liked listening, make sure that you subscribe to my podcast and tune in weekly, because I'm gay, I'm hot, and if there's one thing about me, I'm gonna stir the plot.